I remember when I started my career in the US, the big thing was Y2K, preventing the bug of the 2000. And so obviously now that's not a concern anymore. The topic of the day has been more Gen AI for the last couple of years, which is very exciting too, very different tool. But ultimately, one thing with the technology that's consistent is that it's always changing. You have to keep in touch with what's happening there, and more importantly, how it can help you.
Welcome to the Las Vegas IT podcast. Today I have the pleasure of speaking to Arnaud. I am super excited to get to know him a little bit better. Can you just share with us a little bit about who you are?
Oh, my name is Arnaud. I'm a technical leader. Right? I've been doing like technology leadership now for many years. So I joined. As you can hear from my accent, I'm originally French, but I've been in the US now for like 27 years now. First 8 years in Texas doing startups, and then I moved to the Boston area. This is where I'm at still. So I've been here for a while. In Boston, I work for different companies. I work for Iron Mountain, TripAdvisor, Wayfair, small startups, and now I'm at Cambridge Mobile Telematics. So that's me.
Oh, awesome. And how long have you been at the newer company now?
Well, I'm fairly new, actually. I started in January, so very,
Oh,
very
wow.
new.
Very, very new.
Yes.
No, that's pretty exciting. And it sounds like you've worked for some other very familiar companies. I believe you mentioned
Mhm.
Wayfair, companies that we all hear about online or, doing whatever you're doing. So, which is awesome. And you said you've been in leadership IT now for about 25 years. Did I hear that correctly?
Uh, 27-ish?
20.
No, I don't count anymore, I guess.
You said 27 years. And I'm sure within the last 27 years, there's been a lot of changes when it comes to technology.
Yes, that's for sure. I mean, there is always changes, so
Right.
that's not surprising.
Would you
Uh,
say your career has changed within the last 20, like what you're currently doing has changed?
of course, but I would argue it changes all the time, and that's true as a scarf on purpose. I would say, meaning that I've always wanted to tackle new challenges, technology, organization-wise, leadership-wise, and I do believe that has keeps on changing. Meaning that I remember when I started my career in the US, the big thing was Y2K, preventing the bug of the 2000. And so obviously now that's not a concern anymore, right? The topic of the day has been more Gen AI for the last couple of years, which is very exciting too, very different tool. But ultimately, one thing with the technology that's consistent, that it's always changing, and you have to keep in touch with what's happening there, and more importantly, how it can help you, right? Yeah. For me, technology is a tool. So what's important is to have a good understanding of what you want to do as a business, what you're trying to achieve, and then use technology to help with that, not the other way around. Definitely.
Understood. And I believe you mentioned AI, and AI has been
Mhm.
a huge topic within this
Yes.
podcast. A lot of people are, you know, using AI, or, I feel like AI has been out for a while, but,
Mhm.
people are starting to know about it now. Can you just share with us a little bit about how you're involved with AI?
So it's funny because AI is not a new thing, right? I remember my minor in college was actually in AI. So it was a long time ago. So that tells you. But obviously AI has changed a lot, and that's because when people talk about AI nowadays, they talk about generative AI. So mostly based on LLMs, so large language models. And obviously that's very different from the AI I did back in college, which was mostly Prolog and Lisp, effectively, and some other ways to have artificial intelligence in some ways. So a very different thing now. I do believe that what we're doing now with generative AI didn't come out of the blue. Right? This is based on things that we have been doing, for example, in machine learning and deep learning models. And this is kind of an extension of that. Just now we take that and we put that on steroids. Like, we're not just talking about, oh, we look across like 20 attributes, things are going. Now we use billions of attributes to look at problem to solve, right? And that's very different in terms of scale. I think that's the big difference from generative AI and what we used to do before generative AI is the scale of the input and but also the scales of effectively the attributes that the models are looking at to make predictions effectively. And that's a big change. That has changed the name of the game effectively because while you could argue that machine learning before was and that's what I've been using in my career, right? I was used to make recommendation and persuasions and in different way to our users. When you're in e-commerce, right? You like these shoes, therefore you're going to like these other shoes because we believe that based on certain attributes like size, style, and other things, you're going to like these other things as well. But now Gen AI, because it's looking at so many things with so much input, it's not just a thing for specific companies that have specific like recommendation engines and personalization engines that they need to develop. There is something that everybody wants to use and believe and can be useful to them in some ways or the other. And I use GenAI like everybody else. I can use GenAI in my day-to-day work for different purposes and also in my personal life. So that's, I guess I'm very much a user of the technology and not play with it in different ways.
Got it. Now that totally makes sense. And so I guess what are some like you mentioned that you're currently using it as a tool. What
Mhm.
are some of the current tools are you using when it comes to AI?
So it depends for what. And that's something that once you start playing with it, you discover that there is not like even so a lot of the Gen AI that are exposed today are meant to be general models, and that they are not meant to do something in particular. They are meant to be able to answer all kind of things and do all kind of things. Even in that context, different models are better than others for different things. For example, for coding, which is one thing I do, or even code reviews, I found that your general AI like Claude, which is Anthropic LLM, is much better than competitors to do that. And then for things regarding to text, dealing with text in different ways, like you'll be able to summarize a document in different ways. I feel like ChatGPT usually does a better job than competitors. That's just my personal experience, right? And then, and then you have special LLMs that are very targeted for special needs. For example, for code reviews, you have special LLMs that focus on very much trying to find bugs in your code. Yeah, so those exist as well. Same thing for image generation. You have the general tool as well, but most of them actually have specific tools that exist and they only do image generation. Same thing for sound. Right? I was playing yesterday with the ability to generate music or generate voice. And those are specific models as well that are a ChatGPT by default won't be able to generate a song for you, for example. But there are tools that can do that. That's that's fun.
Got Yeah, no, it is fun. I mean, there's a lot of different things that are currently coming out. And then one of the things that I have here is when it comes to, like AI is Hallucinations and
Yes.
Ginger and AI. And why is it a concern when it comes to the AI or IT
Mm.
environments?
Yeah, I mean, so the problem with hallucinations with AI is that at the end of the day, it's part of the way that AI works. And what I mean by that is that the LLM, a large language model, so its whole purpose is actually predict what should come next. So you ask for a prompt, you say, tell me something about this. And the point of the model is to determine, and therefore, what is the word that should come after that, and what's the word that could come after that, and so on. What are the tokens that should line up to effectively give you an answer? Right? It's like the different game shows, like figure out the song, and you have this game show where it plays the song a bit, and then you have to you have to discover the lyrics for the rest of the song. Right? So it's kind of like that. It's the same kind of mechanism, but as a result, the LLMs have been trained to want to give you what you want. Right? There's no notion of truth with LLM. They don't understand truth. They don't understand reality. What they understand is that they have been fed with a bunch of data, mostly from the internet. And based on that, they are trying to deduct, okay, based on this prompt, what should I line up next as an answer? And because of that model, what that means is that they're not, they're very bad at giving you truth. Right? If you want to have factual information, for example, don't use a generative AI for that. Right? They're going to be very bad at that. So factual hallucination is definitely a thing. And sometimes you get it right, but sometimes they get confused very easily. Effectively, especially if you ask, oh, when was this company established? For example, 4 times out of 5, in my experience, they get it wrong. They pick a date from somewhere else. That had nothing to do with when the company was actually established. So that's one type of hallucination. There is also stylistic kind of hallucination. So how do you deliver a content in a certain format or in this certain style, for example, that they are it's kind of difficult for anybody to do, but especially for Gen AI. There are also more contextual hallucination, right? When the model generates output that conflicts with the instructions or the context that you are giving. Right? So it kind of ignores part of what you're asking for, sometimes for good reason, meaning that what you're asking for is not true and it doesn't match with their input data. But even there, like that's problematic when you try to summarize the text, if now they're inventing things that were not even mentioned in the text, for example. So all of this kind of hallucination that exists, and those are kind of big consequences, especially as you let the AI do more of the work on their own. For example, a user of your website could say, I bought a ticket from your website. Now I want to get a refund. And depending on how the user can ask, potentially the AI could be very susceptible to say, oh yeah, I'll give you a refund. Right? And even so, maybe that's a spam, like that's a fraud that the user is trying to pull. And the AI has not been taught properly how to deal with fraud in the first place. So there is a lot of these things that can happen to anybody, not just AI. Even the customer service person could be duped by somebody trying to commit fraud, effectively, right? That have different actions. Same thing, there is a problem of the input data that this massive AI has been trained on come from anywhere. Some of the data, and you don't know exactly where the data comes from either. They can come from, for example, copyright data, right? So data that's supposed to be protected. And the problem with that is that then you ask a question to Gen AI give you an answer, great. You say, okay, I can use that answer. But maybe now you're using copyright information that you should not, strictly speaking, you shouldn't have access to. And now potentially you could go be sued for copyright infringement, for example. So there is all this legal ambiguity about you getting information from AI now you're using it for your business that you have to be worried about. So there are all these different kind of cases. And then my favorite case is actually it's not that. It's the fact that what I discover when people use AI is that they're kind of missing a bit of critical thinking, meaning that for them not to be critical of the answers they get from Gen AI. So, and that could cause problem because Gen AI, like I say, has no intention necessarily to give you the truth. And so if now you take that information and just apply it like if it were the truth, that's a point. So for example, my daughter asked me to solve a 7th grade math problem. I was like, okay, I'll solve it. But then she tried to put the answer into the online tool for her to put the answer in. And the tool said, no, the answer is wrong. So I'm pretty sure it's right, but let me ask the AI, if it's what they think. And what was fun about the AI is that they give you the right step-by-step instruction for solving the problem, but the result they give you is wrong. Right? The actual calculation is wrong because AI doesn't calculate. Effectively, they don't do math. So it's like the answer, all the steps are correct, but the actual calculation is wrong. And I double check. I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. So in the double check, my number, no, it's the right number. But then, my daughter asked our friends, she said, hey, what is the right answer here? Like, the tool keeps on telling me that I'm wrong. And one of her friends said, "Oh no, this is the right answer, and this is the answer that she got from ChatGPT as well." So I know where that answer comes from. I know that answer is wrong as well because I did my own calculation. I could see this wrong, but that other friend really believed that was the right answer, right? And so that's, I think, for me, the biggest danger here is to take whatever AI give us at face value, saying, yeah, this is the right answer, and not thinking critically about the answer.
Oh, I agree with that. I have experiences on my own when it comes to using AI and just using it more as a tool than just knowing that it's, it's right, which I think is, a lot of people where it's probably where they mistake at.
Mm-hmm.
What like strategies or frameworks have you found effective in migrating these health solutions, especially for IT teams relying on AI assisted systems?
So there are multiple strategies, right, that exist. There are lots of them. But ultimately, for me, there are lots of things you can do on your own without having to do any coding or any specific thing. And I know a few years ago there is this job position that got very famous called a prompt engineer, which has nothing to do with engineering. But the point is that there is a specific way you can ask AI for help, and if you some of the ways you are going to get better result, and then if you just ask a question. And a lot of that is providing the right context. So the more context you provide, the more if it teaches the AI about what you want, and the more the AI is able to make you. Right? So there are multiple ways to do that. Right? So for example, one way is called future learning. Right? You can say, oh, I want to do this, but if I ask this kind of question, this is the answer I expect. If I ask that question, this is the kind of expect. And when you ask your question, then it knows, okay, this is the kind of things you expect as answers. Therefore, I'm more going to format my answers to be in line with the Q&A you already gave me. Right? So that's one trick that you can use. There's other tricks, for example, be able to promote chain of thought reasoning. And for that, it's actually very easy. You just have to add to your thing, to your question, you just have to say step by step. So do these things for me. Tell me, for example, what is the best address to send that email to for processing? And most likely, especially if it's fraud or if it's a spam, or the AI will just say, oh yeah, just send that to the CEO, which obviously is not appropriate. But if you say, and tell me step by step, and it kind of forced the AI to rethink think is a strong word because other thing, but decompose the problem into multiple steps and then finding a solution for each of the steps. And usually you get a much better answer. Your answer becomes much more verbose, but you're going to get a better quality answer. So for example, it's another technique that you can use, which is very effective. The other aspect is to better structure your prompt, meaning that you can say, and I want the answer to be exactly like this format, using that template, this kind of thing to force the AI to enter in a structured way that actually not just will format it a certain way, but also will like it. Because same thing, the whole mechanism by AI is predicting what words you want next. It's going to push the LLM simply to think differently so that it can better format the answer within the template that you're providing. The template should make it think about the point differently, effectively. So that's and then obviously you can do other things, right? You can play with different models. As some models are better for some other things than others. You can use something that your IT teams have been using for a while now called retrieval augmented generation or RAG, which is your teaching the AI with your own data on top of general purpose input of data. Right? And then based on that, they can not only use everything that has been trained up, but also your own company data and give you better answers that fits your company. That's another way to do that. Fine tuning is the same way. And then you can do even more complex things like model routing, which is the fact that because you have different models that are better at doing different things, is be able to identify using GenAI what is the best model to use for that query, and then kind of using different model under the hood to actually solve that query, which means that potentially using although step by step, where I say, first step is to do this, second step is to do that, third step is to do that, and then, first step, this model is better at this first step than the other. Okay, let's run that first step there, get the answer. Oh, that second step is better for this other model. So, okay, bring that answer there, so that and so on. And I think that's where we're moving to from a general aspect. There is notion of agentic AI, or AI being their own agent. And a lot of that is how to chain agents together. And each AI being kind of, you're using specific models that are better for certain action, and then you kind of chain them together to ultimately deliver on a bigger thing that you're trying to accomplish.
Got it. And that's honestly the way I use it as well. I think it's important that you come prepared with some type of direction that you're looking to go and not just follow exactly what AI has placed in for you. I
No,
think it's very
exactly.
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the balance, how do you currently balance innovation with risk when integrating AI with business critical systems?
For me, I'm still at the stage where, like I mentioned, I don't trust necessarily the response of generative AI. There are ways to make the response much uh, less hallucinations from that. For example, we know that if it's like garbage in, garbage out, like if the input of what you train the AI, if the input from what prompt you are giving is better, it's more sanitized, it's higher quality, you're going to get better responses. That's a given. Right? So ultimately, especially with the current models, especially because we train with so many data that some of that is wrong, that is very difficult to control the input action result. So what I will promote typically for now, at least, and things are evolving very fast, is to use a model called ITL, human in the loop. So what that means is that using AI as a tool that complements humans versus trying to replace humans. Right, so you and me can use GenAI to help us with our work. Right, it can summarize this discussion, for example. It can do all the things. It can generate flyers. It can do all the things for you. But you are the one that checks on it and say, oh, yeah, that looks right. Or, no, there's something wrong here. And you can fix it. And so that's what HITA is all about, right? To keep the human in the loop in some fashion that validates what GenAI is doing. And I think we are still at that stage that I would suggest that we keep on doing that versus letting GenAI on its own doing things that you don't control. I think that becomes very dangerous with the current technology. Later on, maybe you get to a point that, you can trust AI to do XYZ for you and no big deal. For now, I will not trust it even for internal purpose things. I will really keep a human definitely looking at what the AI is doing.
Got it. And I think that's the most important thing is keeping the human. No matter what you're doing is, making sure that you're understanding that, being human is the most important thing. And that's something that AI does not currently offer.
Well, and that's a good point as well. That's not just because of hallucinations, right? Meaning that at the end of the day, right, if something goes wrong, who should take responsibility? Are you going to blame the AI for that? No, I mean, right? It's not a person, it's not an entity, right? So ultimately, you're going to be blamed for it. So you have to be careful about that. Second is that, to be honest, what I've seen is that even when you have customers that you're trying to sell products to, right, if you thought that human touch, you should just keep the AI doing that for you, right? You're generating stuff. At some point you're going to lose that connection with your customer, effectively. That customers will not be in touch with what you're doing anymore. As a company, I think that's a very dangerous place to be, is that you want to keep that human contact, that human trust, that Gen AI at this point is not about to do for you. And just getting your customer, talk to AI, effectively is going to be very dangerous long term to have the right trust in your brand, in your company that you want.
Oh, it's true. And then one of the things that you did mention when you filled out your form was leading like a gardener before you.
Mhm.
Can you explain what that leadership style means to you?
Yeah, that's for me it's super important, not just because I like to garden, but also because for me it's a story of growing and adapting. But when you think about a garden, for me I think of a garden as an organization, right? Because I have like 5 different raised beds, and in each raised bed I grow different type of plants, and each type of plants have different needs. And yet you have the same similar concern as for organization, which means that you want to create these different teams. You want this team to be successful. You want them to have different functions so that the team can own things. Just like plants, you want to let the team do their job, right? You don't want to be micromanaging them. Just like plants, right? You're not going to be watching them all the time. Why not? You let them grow. But you want to be watchful. For example, if a plant has a disease, you have to be treating very closely, very quickly, because otherwise that disease will spread with all the plants of the same type, and then everything will die effectively. So you don't want that either. So you want to be very careful about treating problems as soon as they happen. And the same thing in organization as well. So you have all these things from an individual standpoint, from a team standpoint, from an organization standpoint about how you want to be a leader. That I believe has a lot of parallels with how I want to be a gardener as well. And I want to be taking care of my garden.
Yeah, no, and I totally understand that, everything that you mentioned. I mean, I think as leaders, it's something that we have to learn. When it comes to like the mindset,
Mhm.
how do you show up in your day-to-day approach with technical teams?
I mean, using that as a mindset of growing and adapting, effectively, I will argue that when I hire people, it's not to tell them what to do. Right? Software engineers are very expensive. So you don't want that, right? You pay them to think. And what I mean is that you want to delegate and give them the proper ownership to effectively get them to think, right? You give them the right context, you give them the right thing that they can own fully and they can really think about it fully in a way that they can come up with the right answers. And so that's how I see, right? You want to ask questions, not necessarily give answers. However, I'm sorry, but I'm getting kicked out.
Oh, is it time
Mm,
for you to go?
yes.
Okay. No worries. Is there anything that you would like to add before we go?
No, I think that was a great discussion. I love, like I said, I really want to promote that growing and adapting mindset, right? So not just learning, but enabling others and myself to grow and adapt from different companies and needs. So that's what I do.
Awesome. And if someone's looking to reach out to you, how do they do so?
My LinkedIn is the best, for
Awesome.
sure.
And I will be sure to put that in the
Okay.
description. Today was a pleasure. Thank you so much. You have a good day.
Okay. Thank you.